Hi everyone, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface. My breakdown, shall we call it, literally, of Batwoman Season 3, Episode 3 has been up now for a couple of hours for your viewing pleasure. And legitimately, this week's episode was one of the worst episodes of Batwoman I have ever seen in its short and indistinguished career. There was a lot of potential in this episode, which is exceedingly frustrating because they were dealing with Mr. Freeze's technology. And instead of doing something clever, because the show isn't about these characters in as much as it's not about Batwoman, Kate Kane, Ryan Wilder, whatever. It's just about feelings and lesbicans, as I like to call them, lesbicans. The show itself always does itself a disservice because it never actually feeds into the strongest elements that it has available, which is the source material. So when you're playing with Mr. Freeze's tech, then you should be able to come up with some really clever stuff. Long story short, no, they didn't. And in actual fact, the one thing that they did do with the tech, which I'm sure the writer thought they were being exceedingly clever, actually showed how stupid these bunch of crime fighters were, because it actually took longer when one of them could have literally just captured all of the bad guys. But never mind. Never mind. But one of the reasons why I'm stressing that it was a dreadful episode is because, as you can see from the title, we'll get to it in a sec, don't worry, the rating for this week's show. But before we go forward, we must go back. Back. Okay. And to Season 2, because Season 2 was, of course, the turning point. We had Ruby Rose leave the series at the end of Season 1. Now we know she was actually fired from the show due to allegedly numerous complaints which were followed up on by Warner. Javicia Leslie came in as Ryan Wilder for Season 2, a brand new character that they'd made up to be Batwoman. And all it did to serve, instead of again leaning in to the strongest elements that you have, which is the source material, the characters, this was now, instead of being a show about a lesbian superhero, this was now a show about a black lesbian superhero. So it had double the virtue and squared the signaling, I guess. And so also they thought it would house more protection, because how dare you criticize not just a minority, but a doubler minority. And from the get-go, the ratings were absolutely dreadful because the show is fucking dreadful. It's absolutely pathetic. It seems to think that being gay or black is a plot element, and it's not. And it also seems to be the driving force behind virtually, I should really say, every character, which makes the show exceedingly boring. Exceedingly boring. However, with that said, and a cacophony of terrible ratings, it took to episode 13, unlucky for some, it took to episode 13 to pop a rating that was sub 400,000, and this to me was absolutely incredible about how low it was. And the week after, it actually went even lower at 0.346. When I say stabilizing, I mean that is such, given it such the benefit of the doubt and then some, stabilizing a little bit towards the end of the season above at least 400,000. So it took 13 episodes for that to happen. This season, it's taken 3. It's taken 3 episodes for it to post preliminary, which I'll get into in a second, The second worst rating of all time, which really doesn't bode well for the series at all. The first 2 episodes, again, you know, you're below 5. It's garbage. It's garbage, but it's slightly up at least on the end of last season. However, the demo's the worst it's ever been. And what we have found is, I think last week, this did not budge. This actually stayed exactly the same. And the week before, I think the preliminary on this was about a 0.456 or something. So it went up a little bit, but both times the demo went down to a 0.08. So this might get adjusted up slightly and make it the 3rd worst rating of all time instead of the 2nd worst rating of all time. But I would not be surprised to see the demo drop to a 0.09 or a 0.08 once again. The younger 18 to 49 demo are just checking out. There's nothing for them here. This show, if you followed the whole Ruby Rose debacle that's going on at the moment, where she's attacked the show's responded back, cast members have attacked Ruby Rose, crew members have attacked Ruby Rose. Dougray Scott has allegedly slapped her, according to Ruby Rose, with a $10 million lawsuit. But she did say that he was abusive to women and hasn't substantiated her claims at all. And in today's cancellation culture and in today's Me Too culture, Dougray Scott has every right and absolutely should defend his name if these are spurious accusations which have been raised up by Ruby Rose. Now, when they first came out and they were from Ruby's side, the rating went up 3%, nearly 4% on the previous week. But now more revelations have come out. The response from, like I said, cast and crew, the response from Warner Brothers, the response allegedly from Dougray Scott. Has this actually had a repercussion on the rating? Are people just like, screw this whole thing? Some people last week tuning in for to see what it's all about, and then tuning out in their absolute droves because of it. If it's even on the preliminaries, even if this goes up slightly above 400k, even on the preliminaries, if you are sinking below the 400,000 mark in your 3rd episode of the season, then you are in massive trouble for later on. And there is a legitimate chance that this might go sub 300,000 into the 200,000s. If that is the case, all it needs is a couple of big sporting events. All it needs is a couple of bad episodes on the trot and people just start tuning out in the droves, which is what we did see in season 2. You know, the first 3 episodes were kind of like curiosities, and then it was just massive dip. 200,000 people gone, never to come back. Never to come back. That's how desperate it can get. You know, once people decide, that's it, I've had enough, I'm done, I've seen enough of this absolute garbage. Now, I still think that the CW are going to renew this show. I have this feeling that they are going to renew this show for a 4th season. But with this negative publicity, and not all publicity is good publicity, not at all. Negative publicity can be very damaging indeed. A quick example, there was a jewelry chain here in the UK called Ratner's. And I think it was Gerald or Gerard, something like that. Ratner took the stage at one of their events and made a joke that their jewelry would last about as long as a prawn sandwich. And it killed the company. It killed the company. He essentially said our jewelry's tat. Ratner's was meant to be, you know, a decent-ish name. And that was it. It killed the company. The company went under because people were just like, oh, well, if your jewelry's that rubbish, I'm going to go elsewhere. So not all good publicity is good publicity at all. And I think this whole shenanigans, which has been going on with Ruby Rose and the rest of the crew, I think there's plenty of blame all around, you know. I don't think Ruby's a particularly nice person, but I think some of the stuff she's saying is true. I think some of the stuff she's saying is most likely highly embellished. And the same goes for the Warner Brothers response, because they were just like, oh no, everyone's shiny, happy people here. Well, no, you've had stuntmen heavily injured. You've had a PR paralyzed. You've had Ruby Rose herself hospitalized. This set sounds like an absolute joke. And with the tragic events recently on the Rust set with Alec Baldwin, another prick, it just takes, you know, lapses, a couple of lapses in concentration, and people can highly suffer. I know this is getting a bit heady, but, you know, that's how I feel every time I watch an episode of Batwoman. I suffer. So there we go. The second, on the preliminary ratings, the second worst rating ever. Keep up the great work. No, seriously, you're fucking shit.